Hello everybody, welcome to number 27, I'm Jack. In this video, I'm going to tell you the incredible story of the Lamborghini LM002. I'm going to tell you how it almost bankrupted Lamborghini, how it lost them the contract to build the then new BMW M1, and of course, I'm going to tell you how it drives. It all began in 1976 when a small American defense contractor, Mobility Technology International, approached Lamborghini to build an all-terrain vehicle which might have also had military purposes. Now it's really bizarre, I don't know why they approached Lamborghini of all the companies out there, perhaps because of their sort of tractor building experience. In any case, Lamborghini very much liked the idea of that. At that point, financially they were in dire straits. They had, however, just had a deal with BMW to build their new M1 supercar. BMW didn't have the capacity to build sort of one-off specials like that. In order to do that, they needed some capital investment, and they managed to get a grant from the Italian government. Being Italian though, and being Lamborghini, they thought they knew better. So instead of spending the money on the M1 project, they rerouted all those funds towards this car, towards what was to become the Lamborghini Cheetah. So in 1977, the Cheetah was presented at the Geneva Motor Show. It had a rear-mounted Chrysler V8. So far, so good. There was, however, a rather big problem in the works because the Cheetah looked remarkably similar to another all-terrain vehicle with a military application, the FMC XR311. That was a project done for the Pentagon, and it turned out later that some of the designers of the FMC then went on to work onto the Cheetah project. They were so similar, in fact, that FMC decided to sue Lamborghini, and they had to completely drop the project and lose all the money that they had invested. Now you can see from these promotional videos that came out at the time, they're not great quality, but you can see how similar in concept and in design both cars are. Even Tamiya, a really well-known maker of RC kits, when they made their first off-road radio-controlled cars, they presented these two as a pair, and they were built on the same chassis, they just had different bodies. Now the whole episode really damaged Lamborghini's reputation. Their situation was already really precarious, and this made things much, much worse. It caused BMW to bring the M1 project back in-house and almost caused the company's collapse. In the early 80s, Lamborghini was under new management and the project was resurrected. So the Cheetah became the LM001. That was actually due to have an AMC V8 engine. The problem with that car was they found that having the rear-mounted engine off-road made it very, very unstable, and they needed to sort of reassess the whole thing. That's where the 002 was born, and it really is very different to that original car. Not only did they move the engine to the front, but rather than having a relatively simple V8 engine, they put in the V12 from the Lamborghini Countach, which honestly, I still can't get over. It's like, oh, we're Italian. Our product line is pretty much quite standard. It's a bit boring. What can we do to make it a bit more interesting and a bit more mental? I know. And they slotted it in, and it's just crazy. Now, I've seen other reviews on YouTube where people say, what a crazy idea to kind of make this car as a military vehicle. How would it work for an army? For example, one of these had broken down in the desert to be trying to fix the V12, but that's the whole point. This was never meant to be a proper military vehicle. The Cheetah was, perhaps even the LM001. By the time they slotted in this engine, they'd already decided it was going to be a civilian vehicle, maybe primarily aimed at the Middle East, those sorts of places. So for use in the LM, Lamborghini actually slightly detuned the engine from the Countach, also to give it a bit more torque. This car is a later version and has an engine from a Diablo, or a version of the Diablo engine, because it is fuel injected instead of having the carbs. I think it puts out in the region of 450 horsepower. But if that wasn't enough for you, Lamborghini was so mental that as an option you could buy this car with their powerboat engine, which was a 7.2 litre V12 with 720 horsepower. If you have to replace one of the tyres, how much do you think that will be? £3,000 each they are. This car has a 170 litre tank, so that means that If you go to the petrol station, you have to fill it up with super, obviously, and it's going to cost you close to £300. The best figure that you'll get at a steady sort of 60 miles an hour is about 10 miles to the gallon, and that's also because this is roughly twice the weight of the Countach, which this engine was originally in. It was also blessed with independent suspension all round, so they are supposed to be pretty good handling, considering what they are. And bizarrely, it has discs at the front, but it has drums at the rear. Maybe it had something to do with the off-road application, although I don't see why, because even the Cheetah had discs all round. All the same, this is the only Lamborghini ever to be built with drum brakes. When this came out, it cost $120,000. That is $90,000 more than the Range Rover. To be fair, 0 to 60, this was 7.7 seconds, so it was also twice as fast. But still, the fact you could get a Range Rover for $30,000, this cost $120, puts into perspective just how expensive it was. But enough of all that, let's take it for a drive. Wow, those doors feel so heavy. They feel like solid slabs of steel, which is odd because I think at least some of the bodywork is supposed to be in fiberglass, and it's a mixture of fiberglass and alloy. The whole car really is incredibly heavy. Part of that possibly is also this gearbox. Obviously, this does not use the original Countach gearbox. I think it's a ZF unit, and it has 2 levers here to control 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive and the low range, as well as the 5-speed, the 5 speeds there. Right, a very strange thing to drive this, because you've got this, I think it's a Countach wheel or maybe a later Diablo wheel, but right there in front of you, they've put it so close to the dash that you're almost going to be touching the instruments. You've got some odd stuff there, like the handbrake, which is tucked right underneath the transmission tunnel. You've got these 2 levers. You do have that weird wiper stalk there to the side. So the indicator stalk is attached to the steering wheel, but the turning circle is awful. But the wiper stalk goes into the dash, which I've never seen before on any car. The ride is pretty good, and you do feel like you absolutely own the road. You could go over anything. Now, those humps that you see on top of the bonnet, they are there because the engine is unbelievably high up in this car. I mean, you could see when I was standing next to it, it's not quite chest height, but almost. It is so high. All that mass so far up. The steering is incredibly light, so it's not difficult to drive. Now, the gearbox is quite a cool thing because it's a dog leg on an off-roader, dog leg first, 5-speeder. It is, I would say it's not difficult to use, but it's clunky, it's positive, it's got a little bit of weight. You gotta guide it really, but it works well enough, to be quite honest. Now, that engine, under normal driving anyway, it doesn't feel like a supercar engine. There isn't the same drum. It sounds interesting. There's all sorts of machine noises going on. I think because the exhaust is quite subdued, you end up hearing a lot more of the mechanical noise produced by the V12 rather than the exhaust. So as a result, it's not really quite as entertaining as you think it might sound. Let's just slow down a bit and we'll see how it goes as well, if it's got any oomph at all. About those rear drums, but they are massive and they do seem to work really, really well. You can kind of forget about them. They don't take huge amount of pedal pressure, but you do get some feedback. The clutch, on the other hand, is quite short and really pretty heavy, so it's fine on a little jaunt like this, but I think if you were in town, you would soon get sort of fed up with that. Develop a little bit more sound around 5,500–6,000. You can hear the exhaust a little bit more, and it's really, really surprisingly tidy on these bends. I am quite shocked. I had heard that it was pretty good. It's not satisfying to thread through, but it's pretty good, and it's actually much better control than you would think. It doesn't lean massively. I mean, I'm not doing huge speeds, but all the same, better than you'd think. And the brakes are good too, so impressive. Now, looks-wise, it's a really crazy car because in some ways, from some pictures that I've seen, I think, well, there is something, a cohesiveness about it. There's something about it that works. And it definitely has incredible presence, but if you look at any part of it, if you take the sort of the front end, if you take the side profile, if you look at the details, it's actually incredibly ugly. Now, this version has the fuel injected engine, so perhaps that also removes a little bit of the drama. It does make it far more usable though, I think slightly more torquey as well. You don't have those finicky carbs to worry about. Let's just do one last little burst before I take it back. First gear. So now you really have to rev it to make progress. It's not a particularly torquey engine, I think, especially because this car is so heavy. Then you really feel it. To make it go, you kind of have to keep it above 4,000. It picks up significantly above 5 as well. It has a last little spurt, and it just goes up. It's redlined here at about 6.4, something along those lines. Now, the interior definitely has a nod towards functionality. So you've got this sort of set of, I don't know what they call, they're just sort of big square buttons there. Winch, this car doesn't have the winch, but quite simple, sturdy, easy to use. Amusingly, there's a check engine left and check engine right. So I'm not sure, that obviously refers to one bank or the other where there is an issue of some kind. The instruments are all pretty clear. I've already talked about how close the steering wheel is to the dash, which is weird. You've got a lot of room in the upper portion of the car, but below where my legs are, although I do have enough room, it's not exactly cavernous there. The door card does come quite close to my left leg. You sit very much upright as well. It's all fabulously trimmed though, lovely quality leather. So, you know, it is such a weird combination of functional. You have those big bulges on the bonnet, the bull bars, and then you have a comfortable full leather interior. That crazy sort of gearbox specifically used in this car rather than the original Countach one, and that in itself makes it feel quite truck-like really, because it's so long. You can definitely feel it's a heavy thing, but because the steering's quite light, it kind of starts to make you quite comfortable with it. I haven't driven a Range Rover from this time, so say the late 80s, but it'd be really interesting to drive one and see how they compare. Although I think the Rangey would probably be a bit more chuckable, but I think the suspension actually works better on this. Now, if you'd like me to do a video on one of your cars, I'm looking for a Jalpa, other Lamborghinis, please do get in touch either by email or on Instagram. Thank you very much to JHW Classics who lent me this big brute today. What an absolute privilege to be able to drive one of these. I remember when I had like top trumps and stuff as a kid, this used to come up. I think it was weight that used to beat everything on. But having driven it is just a dream come true, so thank you so much. Also, if you want to see a video on another Lamborghini, please check out this Miura video where I compare it to a Toyota of all cars. Thank you all so much for watching, and see you for the next one.